The main driver of violence against Christians in Nigeria are Fulani militia groups in a different part of the country, a part of the country that we call the Middle Belt, which is home to hundreds of Christian indigenous groups who have been under attack for more than a decade by Fulani militias that will come into villages, open fire, kill random civilians, burn the houses, drive people out. These groups aren't planning terrorist attacks in New York. They're not targeting the Nigerian government. They might even fit into the political interests of senior people in the Nigerian government. So it really seems like no one is really concerned with stopping these groups because they're only killing Christians.
Welcome to Into the Supernatural. Today we are joined by Joel Veldkamp from Christian Solidarity International. Joel, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank God. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing well. We're doing well. You know, we often have you on and we talk about a lot of different issues that are going on around the world. It is impossible, though, for us to not continue talking about Nigeria because this is the place where the most Christian persecution happens, the most intense. I think it's something like 80% of all persecution against Christians is happening in Nigeria still. And look, there's been a lot of tough talk. Let's just start here. When it comes to America and the U.S. government, when it comes to Nigeria, but has anything changed when it actually comes to the conditions of what is happening there inside the nation?
I wouldn't say so. I'd say that since this moved on to the radar of the US in December last year, it's actually gotten worse. We've seen an acceleration of killings and kidnappings, especially in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria, which is really neglected by both the Nigerian government and by US counterterrorism efforts, it seems. So no, things are getting worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that for our audience really quick. We have to be very careful what we say so that we don't get censored. But what's going on is basically there was a White House counterterrorism strategy for 2026 that reiterated the world leader in our nation's pledge to protect Christians in Africa. And it specifically read, "We will not permit terrorist groups operating on the African continent to massacre Christians with impunity." But according to Christian Solidarity International President John Eibner, who we've had on the show, who of course Joel knows very well and we adore, the killing of innocent Christians in Nigeria is still happening. As Joel just said, it's getting worse. And so basically, the prominent, not black house people have repeated the Christmas Day 2025 promise over and over again that if terrorism doesn't stop the slaughtering of Christians, there would be hell to pay, was the quote. But it keeps getting worse. So this really seems to be a situation where there's a lot of optics going on, where people are saying the right things to calm Americans down and have us get distracted and move on, where the reality of the situation is that it is going from bad to worse. So I just want to kind of set that landscape and clarify for everybody what we're talking about as we continue this conversation.
Yeah. You know, Joel, in light of everything that Jen just said, and in light of the fact that you said this is getting worse, why is it getting worse? Like you would expect if there's pressure coming from America, if there's pressure coming from other countries that those in Nigeria in leadership would retreat from it.
Mm-hmm. I'm worried, Billy, that there's a little bit of a bait and switch going on because Nigeria is home to transnational terrorist groups like ISIS, like Boko Haram, that threaten the Nigerian government and that also threaten the U.S. And it's been a long-standing U.S. policy to cooperate with the Nigerian government in fighting these groups, in occasionally bombing these groups, taking action against these groups. And it seems like that sort of action has kind of ticked up a little bit since December. But those groups are not the main driver of violence against Christians in Nigeria. The main driver of violence against Christians in Nigeria are Fulani militia groups in a different part of the country, a part of the country that we call the Middle Belt, which is home to hundreds of Christian indigenous groups who have been under attack for more than a decade by Fulani militias that will come into villages, open fire, kill random civilians, burn the houses, drive people out. These groups aren't planning terrorist attacks in New York. They're not targeting the Nigerian government. They might even fit into the political interests of senior people in the Nigerian government.
Uh-huh.
So it really seems like no one is really concerned with stopping these groups because they're only killing Christians. They're
Mm.
not hurting anybody else.
Wow. Okay, so who are the Fulani? For those who don't know, because this is actually, and by the way, the reason that we cover this so intensely is we talk about evil on this show. We talk about miracles. We talk about a lot of different things in the supernatural realm. We're also firm believers, and Jen loves when I bring up Ephesians 6, but in Ephesians 6 and the spiritual battle that is going on, but that it is pouring over into the world, around us. And that a lot of what we're seeing, we have a hard time explaining it, in human terms, because it is otherworldly, it is evil. And that is what this issue is. This is flat out evil manifest. But tell us who the Fulani are for those who don't know.
So it's hard to know what words to use to describe these groups that are massacring Christians because they don't have a flag, they don't have an organizational name that they use for themselves. And the Fulani are a people group with more than 40 million members scattered across several different countries in West Africa. And we don't want to say that all Fulani are terrorists. Of course, that's not true. And even there are many thousands of Fulani Christians nowadays.
Mm.
But there is an organized militia movement drawn from the Fulani ethnic group in the Middle Belt that is systematically attacking Christian villages in places like Kaduna State, Plateau State, Benue State. And this has been going on for about a decade now. They seem to have relationships to senior figures in the Nigerian security architecture, going all the way back to colonial times when the British ruled Nigeria. The British favored Fulani Muslims as their go-betweens, as the people that they entrusted the governance of northern Nigeria to.
Mm.
And that tradition is still kind of there. Fulani Muslims still kind of think that they have the right to rule northern Nigeria and to rule this land called the Middle Belt. So we're probably seeing an organized militia movement with ties to people in the Nigerian security state, but they don't have a name, they don't have a flag, and so Fulani militias is about the best we can do.
So it's probably very hard for military operations to target them as
I
well.
don't think so, actually, because when you talk
Okay,
to Christian leaders in the Middle Belt, they know where these people are. They know where their camps are. They know
got
where
it.
they're striking from. They just don't have the ability to do anything about it. And there's
Mm.
also a pretty strong Nigerian military presence in this region. And consistently, these military forces will show up like 3 hours after the attack is done, or a day after the attack is done, even if
Yeah,
they're located like 2 kilometers away from where the attack is taking place.
right. Yeah.
Wow.
So again, what Billy says is this is obviously tied to spiritual warfare. I mean, I would say practical things that we can do as listeners. One is to be praying. I think prayer is underestimated. And that's not just, that's not a caveat for saying like, oh, just pray and don't do anything about it. I mean, pray fervently that these military leaders or groups would find Jesus, the same way so many Muslims are in the Middle East. You see that one of the biggest revivals that's going on in the entire world is in Iran right now. And it's because Jesus is actually revealing himself to so many of these extremists in their dreams, which is really fascinating. So I think the first thing we could pray is that these people encounter Jesus in a supernatural way and change sides. But then also, I'm just from a, and not that that's not practical, but from a more hands on approach, are there letters we can be sending to our senators? Are there letters like who could we be voicing this to as Americans to say, hey guys, we have got to get in there and do something about this? Is there anything set up like that that you guys know of? And if not, maybe we'll do some research.
Yeah, there's a congressman named Riley Moore who's been doing really great work on this issue, on Nigeria itself. He has taken up Nigerian Christians as kind of his cause, and he's
Okay.
introduced legislation to kind of guide the U.S. policy response uh, to the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. We've read this legislation. We had the honor to endorse it when it was
Amazing.
announced last year in November, I think, possibly December. But it's really, really good work that Congressman Moore is doing, and we would encourage people to write to their congressman, say you should support Congressman Moore's initiative for Nigeria, write to the president, say, we're glad of what you've been saying. We want to see your words matched with actions now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I think is really important when we're having this conversation too is for us to be able to, we talk about these big numbers or these big, that this is 80% of all persecution is happening there, that, there's chaos going on. And we talk from a 30,000 foot level, but the fact is individual stories so people can understand what is going on. There are a few things that have happened recently, and I'd love for you to just break them down so people can understand the human toll. I mean, imagine that you're mourning at a funeral for Christians who were killed, and then, Fulani terrorists attack. Talk about that. I know that happened on May 8th. There was a horrific event there, and then we'll talk about a reverend who was recently killed as well.
Mm-hmm. So both of these incidents happened in a place called Plateau State, which is really the epicenter of violence against Christians in Nigeria today. Not coincidentally, it's also kind of a Christian stronghold in northern Nigeria. It's a place where Christians live in lots of numbers, and so they kind of are the natural target of these Fulani militias that want to drive Christians out of the region. So just after midnight on May 8th, a group of Fulani militiamen went into a village called Gabra Zongo in Plateau State and just started killing people with machetes. 11 Christians were killed, including several pregnant women. The local defenders tried to protect the village, and they really didn't have the means that they needed to fight off attackers with machine guns. So this is in itself not an unusual story in Nigeria. In the Middle Belt, unfortunately, this sort of thing happens almost every week. What made this one unusual is that they had a funeral for the people who were killed the next day, and that funeral was attacked by Fulani militiamen. And men who we know, including our partner, Solomon Wantiri, was at the site of the funeral while it was happening, and they saw the attack taking place. Fortunately, not that many people were hurt in that attack, but it just shows the constant insecurity that exists in this region for Christians.
And the evil. I mean, the fact that you're attacking a funeral, it's unimaginable. But that gives people a sense of what is actually happening. And then you had the murder of this reverend there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. This one stuck out to me because there's a counter narrative pushed by the Nigerian government that these attacks aren't actually about religion, that it's just conflict over resources, or it's misunderstandings about cattle grazing routes that get exaggerated and then turn into violence between Christians and Muslims, right? Which is not true. But this is a case that really shows the religious dimension of these attacks, because this is a case where Fulani militiamen came to the house of a pastor in a village, went into his house while he and his whole family were sleeping, and shot them to death in their beds. They went to the pastor's house, the parish, targeted it, went inside looking for the people who lived there, and killed basically all of them. Their youngest son managed to escape through the window, but their baby daughter was killed, their other son was killed, the wife was killed, and the pastor were all killed. And witnesses who saw the attackers leaving said they were shouting Allahu Akbar as they left. So this is very clearly an attack on a Christian religious leader, targeting the Christian religious community, trying to sow fear and trying to show people that Christianity will not be accepted in this region.
It's unbelievable and heartbreaking. One of the things I think we sit here, we talk about these things, and a lot of people are hearing or watching this and they're thinking, oh my goodness, this is so depressing. This is so horrific. But, Jen was talking about some solutions before, but how do we fix the problem? If you had, the leader of the free world in front of you right now, what would you say to him? What advice would you give about how America in particular could lead the charge on stopping this?
I would say the U.S. government needs to engage more with the Nigerian government, but not only. The Nigerian federal government, the Nigerian president, they want to make the U.S. happy, but they also don't want to endanger their own relationships inside the country. So what the U.S. really should do is go down to the state level, meet with the governors of Plateau State, of Kaduna State, and even down further to the community level. Meet with local Christian leaders, find out what their issues are, find out what their needs are, and see what can be done. Maybe they need radio equipment. Maybe they need intelligence. Maybe the US can help warn the villages when these attacks are coming. There are lots of possibilities, but it'd be really important for the US to engage at the community level in the Middle Belt, to listen to local Christian leaders there and not just funnel everything through Abuja, the Nigerian capital.
Okay, so one more thing that we're really interested in asking you, Joel, before we let you go is, obviously there's a lot going on in Nigeria, but the U.S. actually, allegedly at least, killed an ISIS leader in Nigeria on May 16th. Could you fill us in on that a little bit and what happened there?
Sure. So on May 16, the US killed a very senior ISIS commander based in northeast Nigeria, a guy named Abu Bilal al Minuki, a guy who's from Nigeria, who's been fighting the jihad in Nigeria for a long time, but who declared his allegiance to ISIS a few years ago after ISIS became the big name in terrorism. Um, so they killed him, apparently with help from Nigerian intelligence, but it was U.S. military forces that carried out the strike that eliminated him. It's obviously good news.
Yeah,
One thing that kind of illustrates the incompetence of the Nigerian government in these matters is that 2 years ago, the Nigerian government had also announced that they had killed the same guy.
very
And after
interesting.
the US killed him for real, the Nigerian government had to come out and say, oops, we were wrong that other time. That this time it really happened. Um, so it's good that this action was taken, that this guy can no longer threaten Nigerians. The issue is I'm worried that it's almost too easy. You find one guy and you eliminate him, but that doesn't really solve the problem. Like I
Right,
said before, ISIS is not really the main group killing Christians in Nigeria right now. They certainly are, but not at the same level as the Fulani militias.
right.
Um, so I'm worried that getting rid of this one guy is like an excuse not to do the hard work of engaging with Christian leaders, engaging with Christian communities, and building sustainable ways to protect these villages in the Middle
Hmm.
Belt.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that goes back to Billy's, favorite point of the Bible, Ephesians 6. I mean, it really is like you wipe out one person, but the battle is not against flesh and blood. It's like, great, get rid of this person who clearly is just, you know, not turning his heart toward the Lord. So, my opinion on that is I always pray for people's salvation. And I'm like, Lord, though, if they're never going to turn to you, then take them out. And I think that's a fine heart posture based on the Bible. And I hope people are not mishearing my intention in that. But I mean, it's we want to keep people safe. We want to live and promote peace when possible. And, this just goes back to the point that it is very much a spiritual war. So you might get rid of a person, but you're really just getting rid of, a pound of flesh. You're not getting rid of the actual spiritual
Yeah.
problem behind it. So, I mean, again, for everybody that's listening, we love having Christian Solidarity International on. Joel, please tell us some way that we can support Christian Solidarity International and the work that they're doing. And again, guys, we will put the links in our show description as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. If people want to go to our website, there are really three basic things that we always ask for. You can pray for Christians in Nigeria, and you can sign up for our prayers newsletter on our website. We'll email you maybe once a week with the names of specific people in specific
Mhm.
countries who you can pray for. Sometimes Nigeria, sometimes Iran, sometimes other countries. Um, Another thing that you can do is, again, write to your lawmakers, write to the president, tell them that we're very concerned about what's happening, the genocide that's unfolding against Christians in Nigeria, and we want the US to take more action to halt these killings. And finally, CSI is on the ground in Nigeria. We work with trusted partners in several different states across the country to get people medical aid in the wake of terrorist attacks, to get people food and shelter when they've been displaced from their
Mhm.
homes by terrorist attacks, and also to help people begin to rebuild their lives in whatever part of the country they've been driven to, whether that's starting a small business or starting a farm. We make sure that they get the support that they need. So if you want to be part of that work, you can give a gift at our website. Um, we're grateful for any amount that people are willing and able to give.
Yeah. Go ahead, Billy. Were you going to say
I was going
something?
to say, no, I mean, the work you guys do is incredible, and we're thankful, to you, and we're thankful that you come on the show, as always today, and people can go on to your website, as you just noted. To do that, we'll have a link in the description as well, and we just appreciate everybody tuning in today. Make sure you are subscribed to the show. You can do that on any podcast platform. You can do it on YouTube as well. Joel, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you both.